In this week's Seder of Parshas Shoftim, we read about the Minui HaMelech, the appointment of the king upon Klal Yisrael, and we are told that there are certain areas in which the king is not permitted to overstep his boundaries. The first one that is mentioned is that he is not permitted to afford himself a plethora of susim, of horses, so as not ultimately to rely upon those coming out of the land of Egypt and to spend so much time there that the people will effectively return to the land of Egypt. The second is that he's not permitted a ribui noshim. He's not permitted to marry more than 18 wives. And last but not least, v'kesav v'zohav lo yarba lo ma'od. He's not permitted to afford himself an amount of money that is in excess of that which is needed in order to maintain his troops, to maintain his kingdom. And then the pasuk states, v'hayakish shivto al kisei mamlakto, and when he will be sitting upon his throne, v'chasav lo es mishnei haTorah hazos al sefer, he is to pen not one Sefer Torah, but rather Mishnei Torah Hazos, a coupling, a doubling over two Sifrei Torah. States Rashi, citing the Gemara in Sanhedrin Chaf Aleph, Shtei Sifrei Toros. Why does anyone require two Sifrei Toros? One that he is to place within his treasury, and the other that will accompany him wherever he goes as he's carrying out and fulfilling the duties of the monarchy. And whereas there is much discussion regarding what the nature of the second Sefer Torah is, was it simply the Aseret Dibros? Was it the entirety of the Torah? Was it worn on his arm as a rather small amulet, as it were? There is no discussion whatsoever regarding the Sefer Torah in the Beis Knesset. Now, we understand that the Sefer Torah, that he need see to it that it would accompany him wherever he would go, was needed to remind him on a momentary basis that no matter how gifted he was, no matter how wealthy he was, no matter how many horses he had, no matter how many wives he had, no matter how many people were korim mishnachavim, would bow down, as it were, before the king in obedience to the monarchy of Israel, at the end of the day, he was promised no less to the Torah Kadosha than each and every member of Klal Yisrael. That makes sense. But why the Sefer Torah in his treasury? And I think that the answer is because what does a person put in a treasury? Something that's placed in a treasury, generally speaking, is never taken out and paraded around in front of others. Sometimes it could be shown to others by the owner of that treasury, to show the other individual what is the most precious belonging that he possesses. And at other times, the owner of the treasury itself may go into the treasury to remind himself what, in fact, is the most precious thing that he possesses. I well remember when our firstborn was not even a toddler, just a baby, an infant in his crib, that the Rebbetzin once took him to a family simcha. I was traveling a little later than she. And I came home. It was the end of a long day, an arduous day. And I was tired. I was bothered by one or two things that had occurred that day. And I walked into the baby's room, to our first baby, our Bechar's room. And I leaned over his crib. And I stuck my head down towards the mattress to inhale the smell of the baby powder, to inhale the smell of my son, of our baby. And when I took that in, anything and everything that bothered me during the course of that day was set aside, because I was reminded very clearly, instantaneously, what was the most precious thing that we possessed. The Melech is told, when he will be reigning, and he will be making the most difficult of decisions of war, decisions of monarchy, decisions of government, paskening shailas. And everyone is paraded before him in obedience, some fawning perhaps. He is to remind himself by that second Sefer Torah in his treasury, at the end of the day, not simply that he is beholden to the Sefer Torah, for that he carries it around with him every moment of the day, but to remind himself at the end of the day and at the end of his monarchy what the most important and significant gift from HaKadosh Baruch Hu he has been entrusted with and given, the Sefer Torah in his treasury. During this month of Elul, as we approach the Yom Noraim, it's probably a good idea for all of us to take a look at our treasuries, to open the door carefully, quietly, in solitude, and to look inside and to see just what it is that we value more than anything else in life. Have a wonderful Shabbos.